Hello and welcome back to Bold Moves. Thank you so much if you're new here for joining. I hope you love it here. You find something useful from this episode, and I encourage you to go back to previous episodes as well and see whether there's something in there that can help you live a bold, brave, audacious life. Today, I want to answer a question that was asked by one of my listeners, and it always just blows my mind that on the other end of this, somebody is listening, someone is watching, and it's so humbling. And so thank you. Thank you for all my viewers. Thank you for listening, regardless of whatever platform you're listening or hearing me from. So the question was, hi Wanjiru, how have you navigated marriage and career ambition in a way that you've grown together as opposed to growing apart? And I was like, wow, okay, that's a very hard conversation, very hard question. But I have also been challenging myself as Wanjiru to be bold and brave. Yeah, and to also make bold moves in the sense of the kind of conversations that I bring here, so that they're not just surface level. Here are 7 tips to grow in your career based on my personal experience, or this is blah blah blah. I want to try and go deep as well and go to a place where it requires me to be brave, because it might make me share something vulnerable, and I want to do that for the people that are listening or watching. And so the question is a good question, and I will do my very best to answer it as authentically in a raw way as possible. So let me start out by Sheryl Sandberg quote. I realize I actually do love quotes. This one stood with me. I think it was when she wrote the Lean In book. One of the biggest career decisions you can make is who you marry. And that's been so true in my marriage and in my career. And so I would say, because whoever wrote this to me isn't married, is in a place where they're dating. And so this is sort of was a place for them. They were worried in a way that whoever I choose, what if my marriage and the ambitions and where I want my career to go sort of clash at some point. And so I'd say choose well. That's the start. And I know that sounds cryptic and vague, but I promise I will explain. What I have seen after almost 13, I need to sort of go back and count. Yes, 13 years. We got married in 2012. Yes, so 13 years. After 13 years of marriage, what I've seen is people change. I have changed. My husband has changed. Like life never leaves us the same. But what doesn't change are core values, the things you stand for, the who you are, those rarely change. I mean, you'd have to go through catastrophic experiences or traumatic experiences in your life to make such a shift in who you are. So those usually stay intact. And so as you choose, the key things, for example, how he treats other people, how he treats you. Does he cheer you on in the things that you're achieving, whether that's in college and the line of work you're going into, or early career? In early career, is he sitting with you and helping you prepare for interviews? Is he telling you to push yourselves harder and be like, babe, you can achieve this. I feel like you're laying the bar so low. Why don't you go after this thing? I think you can do it. If you're thinking about, going to study abroad or one day living abroad, he's feeling like, oh yeah, that is something we could do. Imagine what it'd be like to raise a family, outside the country and give our kids a wide view of the world. You can tell about those things even now before you have them. And so if there's a similarity in vision, ambition, the kind of things that you're chasing, then chances are those will stay the same even in marriage. Even when different careers come up, when you may need to quit or you're laid off from one role and you need to move into the next. When you have a conference that you need to travel to, or a work assignment, or you have a relocation, we've had two, to navigate those. Again, please just choose well. I can't remember where we had this, but one of the things that we learned early is that whatever is an issue or a red flag when you're dating is only, like, it becomes an even bigger red flag or an even bigger issue when you get married, So when the rose-colored glasses come off, that infatuation phase where everything they do is just exciting and awesome, and you're willing to put up with all these small annoyances, where now you can no longer put up with that, they become really issues. And we do have a friend of ours who I loved what he'd say is, pick somebody based on their character, not on stuff they've never had to do anything about, including looks. I mean, people are born the way they were. Sure, they groom well, there's something they do. But honestly, character is something they've developed over time. They are reliable and dependable, which means that when they say they're going to do something, they do it. A difficult period in your life is who they'll be alongside you when they are the father to your kids, and you are sitting outside the hospital and waiting to see the doctor because your child has a fever or is sick. I mean, character is something they work over time on, and so that's what you should choose. This is something my husband did when we were still dating, which I super appreciated. When we were dating, he came with this list of questions. I can't remember where he found them, but looking back, I think that was such ahead of its time. But every so often we'd discuss like 2 questions from the list, and he'd ask, how do we want to parent? Chores when we are married, how do we want to do chores? Like, do we want it to be fairly divided? Are you okay with kitchen tasks and things like that? And we talked about our past, our exes, our sexual lives, and it was such a deliberate, intentional way of dating. And we had this rule where we said, it doesn't matter what I discover about you now, it's not going to make me leave you. However, it'll make me know why you behave the way you do, why you're so weird. Yeah. And it helped to bring all of these things to the forefront at the onset. A lot of that stuff has changed. I used to be so good and dedicatedly being in the kitchen a lot. I love to cook and do dishes and stuff like that. And in certain phases of our life, like when we lived in Dubai, I was a full stay-at-home mom when my husband worked. Now that we are both in London with no nanny or helper, both of us with full careers, my husband is fully engaged doing laundry, folding laundry, vacuuming the house. I'm cooking, I'm cleaning. Our son is doing his chores and loading and unloading dishes. I mean, but it's good we talked about those things on the forefront at the beginning. Choose well. And remember that what you see just get reinforced more in marriage. Let me just sort of walk you through my journey from my first job, straight out of college, the second, third, like that, and sort of the things that have happened throughout the change of ambition and the change of careers. One, I remember my first job straight out of college, because my husband and I met in college. So he left earlier than me. He graduated earlier than me because I think we met when he was in 5th year and I was in 2nd year. Cannot remember exactly. I think so. And so he had a job, and so there was already beginning immediately. There was sort of honesty of how much do you make? I knew exactly how much he made. We were super excited when he got like a promotion and a salary bump, and we were like, okay, I remember we were talking about his folks and them needing a new microwave, and we went around several supermarkets looking for a good one to buy them. But there was already that openness with regard to, this is how much I make, this is the job, this is what is required of me. And so and the fact that for me I had worked before college meant that when my first job, it was more managerial. I made a bit quite a significant amount of money when I first joined the job. But I worked in such a busy and also, I would even say, toxic environment. And then soon after I was pregnant, and I would come home upset and angry almost daily. And I do remember my husband saying, you know what, come home. We won't starve. Just come. Like, I am tired of hearing you complain. And if it's not changing, then we should change. Then we should be the ones that change the response. And it was like, you know what? We will manage on one salary. We'll be okay. We will not have a big, glitzy, glamorous life, but we'll be fine. And then you can look for a different job elsewhere. And just before I quit, I lost the baby. We lost the baby. And so that pushed me even further, and I quit. I turned back my laptop and my work badges, and that was the end of me and that career. And then came me and blogging and starting Still a Mom, a nonprofit that I founded, I think, in 2014. And then the registration and starting support groups for women and men who'd lost their babies. And for the next 7 years, my husband funded Still a Mom. Like, it was a nonprofit that was not making money. When we first began, we didn't charge anybody for support groups. It was, I would make tea in the house and some snacks, and I'd come to a meeting room, which we paid for with our, money, essentially his money. But I loved how we've always approached finances as a joint thing, as a thing we do together. And he'd pay for those meeting rooms, and I'd meet these ladies we'd walk through the support groups, and it grew and grew to the point where I got funding. And so I was pulling a very small stipend. And so it was very exciting for me. And I felt proud that I was contributing to the household budget. And so it was lovely because, I would pay the nanny, I'd maintain my car, just those things. I'd manage the household bills, shopping, and, those small bills. But I do remember him always saying, we are good. Go do this thing that's super important. Go be there for these men and women. The first logo, the very first website, completely designed by my husband, like I never doubted that he was backing me the entire time. And so I'd say that was still a mom. And that's the point where I also began to travel a little bit, do a lot of media appearances where I'd talk about our story of loss. And never once did I feel that he didn't like that I was out there in the public telling our story on child loss, creating awareness. He actually appreciated that our story could be turned into something that helped other people. And so those things remained constant and consistent to who he had always been. And that partnership between, this is what is going on in our life, but this is also what you need to do in terms of career. He was super proud of me. I remember how excited he was when I got the funding that I did from Facebook, and I was able to start a counseling center. I was able to see more people. I had more employees. It was just, he walked the journey all the way. He's always been media shy. So I do remember he only showed up for one media interview, and that was it. And I also appreciate that he didn't have to do all of that. And I made peace with the fact that he would not be in front of a camera telling the story as a couple. And that's okay, because that's not who he is. But and that was not the only way he could show his love and support. And then when it came to now relocating to Dubai, this was a big one. It was him coming to tell me that there's this opportunity that he's seen. There's a job he's looking to apply. And just that knowledge of FYI, heads up, there's this an opportunity. And I'm like, go for it, apply for it, and then here's the opportunity that has come in. There's this role, here's the contract. This is how much they're going to be paying me. And the fact that he asked me to move with him to Dubai. I know to some people that's not a big deal, but it's something that I really, really desired. And it was such a show of respect for me, because while we were already married, there was no assumption that I was going to leave behind all the things that I was doing just to accompany him. Like, it wasn't assumed on his part, but he asked me. And it was a difficult decision for me, because while I needed to let go of still a mom and give up the space, let go of my employees, because I was already doing this because of the hard financial times that we were going through. It was just before COVID, and we weren't attracting any new funding. We weren't at a place where we were self-sustaining. We started to do things that we were charging people for, but we had not broken even yet. And so at the time, I actually do remember an offer by the Bill and Melinda Gates to do some social media campaigns, the Gates Foundation. And so, it's stuff that I said no to for me to say yes to moving to Dubai. And I do remember 2.5 years, I think, of just being a stay-at-home mom. And I don't do housewife very well. I know that about me. And so I find ways to be busy. And that had to do with, I homeschooled. When I don't housewife very well, I not to mean that I don't respect being a housewife, but I don't sit still easy. I like to have something that I'm working on, a project. So I homeschooled a lot with our son, because we moved to Dubai when he was 2.5 years old. And then as well, I started a business. I started to sell toys. A friend of mine who does shipping in Dubai and is really great at it, taught me sort of the ropes. And so I'd buy toys that we were already using, and I was sharing on social media, puzzles, like good Montessori toys that are not plastic and easy to break. And I didn't want clutter, so I wanted multi-use toys. I learned about edutainment, something that can entertain a kid, but it's also educational. And so people would say, oh, I saw this puzzle on your stories or on your Instagram. Can you send that over? And so I began to ship. And so I was having a business that I eventually even had registered and and had a social media platform for it, and it was doing quite well. And then, but I also knew that I still wanted to work. and like being corporate. And so even when I would sit with my husband and tell him this is what I'm thinking of doing, he'd say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And I said, I want to stay in the social impact space, even if I know in Dubai there are not so many jobs like those. And he would ensure that the way we do our budgets is such a way that we have both the regular budgets of what goes where, what is being saved, investments, blah blah blah, but also everyone gets an allowance to sort of do their stuff, which means that I've always never felt that I needed to ask for money. There was always, if I wanted to go for coffee or lunch with a friend or even by myself, I always had some money that I could use, which gave me a lot of agency. And so during that time, I was spending this money, on revamping my resume, getting a cover letter done, talking to a career coach, and even paying for LinkedIn Premium for a short period of time just for me to understand and take some courses, all of this. And just the sort of you go girl kind of energy was very, very helpful. And then I do remember when I did get a job around the time that I was getting my contract and we're negotiating, my husband actually got a promotion and was to move to London. The opportunity that had come up was for London. And here I was, finally had a good job, and I was about to start. And so he turned down the London job, and just so that for us to stay, so he got to keep his old job in the department he was working in, and I got to stay within UPS and do my job. And it's funny how, interesting enough, we've had a full circle moment, because right now we live in London. This move was by my job, but he's ended up here on a role the same level as his old promotion. Like, it's such a full circle moment when your spouse honors you. I had sacrificed to leave Kenya and go to Dubai and be jobless, and be without a nanny for those 2.5 years and just do housework and probably run a business. I had sort of given up my career. And so for him to turn around and honor me in that same way, because I was now thriving and there was this opportunity, and we sat down and we talked about it. And probably if I even go back further, before we took the Dubai job, I do remember there's a time when we were newly married, when he was in South Africa for a short assignment for 3 months. And we so hated the long distance relationship and navigating all of that. And I remember us agreeing from that time on, and we said, if any of us has a studying abroad, work abroad, anything, any opportunity at all, we are going together or we're not going at all. And I feel like because we decided that together early on, when the opportunities came around, nobody ever thought that they'd ever move and separate the family. It was never even discussed after that. It was an assumption. And so him telling me he's gotten this opportunity to come to go live in Dubai, it was either, we stay in Kenya or we move together as a family. And I want to say that just ensuring that you discuss and talk about things like this is super critical, and not when they are happening, way before they happen. Discuss them. Because I've met people who lived abroad for a year, 2 years, and by the time they came back, their marriages were not the same. And so if it works for you, great. But you cannot know that it'll work if you guys don't talk about it beforehand, not when the opportunity has already presented itself. So that was the Dubai time. And then now with London, when my role gave me an opportunity for a promotion and for relocation, there were discussions about where it is that I would end up. There were discussions about Brussels and Singapore and London. And I just remember his support through it all. He'd be like, let's go. Wherever you are sent, let's go. I'd prefer that it be here, London, because at least there I could work. And I know it's easier for me to negotiate that internally, but wherever you end up, I'm good. And I'm happy to be the jobless one, for me to go and seek out opportunities, because it is you who brought us here. And it was just lovely. It was so, so lovely. Just us moving. How have we navigated ambition and careers, full-time careers, alongside our marriage, alongside parenting? The practicalities of it. One, we calendar everything. Everything is calendared. I can't show you because it's a lot of work just to turn this camera. Plus, anyways, I know some people are listening to this podcast style, so I'm going to do my best to describe it. On our fridge, there's a monthly planner, and we write it out for every single month, May, and then we put in the calendars, and then we put every single thing. Is our son having a sports day? Is he having a school tour? They're going maybe to the British Museum or something. Whatever it is, it's in the calendar. Are we invited to a birthday party? When is half term? I can see right now that next week is half term. There's a football camp. All of those things are put in a calendar so we can see, right? And the next other thing is that we have on our Outlook work calendar school pickup times. Yes, so that nobody puts a meeting in that slot. And then we've managed to work out, you need to go to the office 2 days a week. Okay, I can go to the office the same 2 days a week. All right, so what are we going to do? We may need to pay for our schools here in the UK start at 8:30, but they have this thing called breakfast clubs where you can pay for your kids to arrive a little bit earlier, especially because, you have to probably take the train and go to the office. And so we did that because even in Dubai schools, we used to start at 7:30. So our son is used to that earlier time. And so we're like, okay, then if you go to work on Monday and Tuesday and I go to the office Monday and Tuesday, then I drive to the office because our office is not very near a train station. Meanwhile, my husband's office is in central London, so he takes a train. So because I drive, then Mondays and Tuesdays I will wake up and drop my son to work and head to the office, and then I'll come from work and pass by and pick him up. And those are the days actually our son also has after school stuff, extracurricular stuff he's doing inside the school, football, coding class stuff he's doing. And so thankfully it allows for me to go to the office and not have to come at 3:30 when schools are out, maybe come at 4:30 because he has an hour of an extra after school club. So stuff like that, we've navigated that, and it's in my work calendar and it's in his work calendar. Literally, we send each other those invites for the full term. And so because every so often you're going to have one meeting that you absolutely cannot move. It's not a meeting that you can do while you walk or drive. You need to be sharing your screen or something like that. And then you're able to say, hey, babe, this one, you need to go, So we find a way to work that out, but everything is calendared. And honestly, that's how my entire life works. If it's not on the calendar, it's not happening. Beneath that monthly planner is a blank area which I use and the family uses for shopping list. I tell people, because we shop once a week for the household, fruits, vegetables, milk, bread, all of that. If it's not on the list, I'm not buying it. It won't be bought, And so for me, when something you see it's about to be finished, we write it in the list. And that's how we've managed to run the household in a calendared way. I love that we both love Excel sheets. I think my husband loves it way more than I do. He's such a nerd. But I like that part because everything, we sit down and do our monthly budget every single month. Once a month, we sit down. And most of the time, I'm usually so sleepy and tired. But, it's like, it's got to be done. Come, all right, this is how we're managing our finances this month. These are obligations. These are our bills. This is what we're doing. The second thing is also how we manage our relocation. The particular one being the Dubai to London. The Kenya to Dubai was not complex. He arrived a month earlier. He house hunted. I moved with Keith with like 6 suitcases, and that was our entire life. In Dubai, though, we had an entire household that, my employer shipped to Dubai, ocean container. We were moving, we were selling a car. We were, we were canceling leases. We were coming this side to find a new house. So there was so many things. We had a lot of immigration, work visas to navigate, and getting the new identification. Schools to research, house hunting that we came to do together. And so all of those we managed on an Excel sheet that we shared, a shared document. And there was a list that had who is doing what, and that clarity, I love it. So when it comes to growing apart versus growing together, I'd say doing things together has helped us stay together. Does that make sense? Yeah. Stay together. And then also the intentionality of loving each other's company and spending time together as a family. And that's sort of forced upon you by living abroad, where that person is your only person that you know in that country. So you have no choice. You have to get used to living together in the same roof. And I feel like sometimes in Kenya, we didn't have that because the way the society is cultured is it's easy for you to have different sets of friends. During the weekend, I have a wedding or a baby shower. He has something he's doing with his friends, with his guy friends, at the club or something. Just, it's so easy to live separate lives. But then when you're abroad, I mean, he doesn't have friends. You don't have friends. At least not yet. And so you guys learn to do life together. And then any friends that you bring on board other than coworkers are usually common friends. And so you find yourself doing a lot of common stuff together. And the other thing I love about just sort of living away is also how we've navigated chores in the house, that there are no gender roles. I think we struggled, or we didn't do that way in Kenya, and probably it's because there was a helper, there was somebody who was there living a living nanny, and so it was not quite the same as right now. Learning to sort of just have that rhythm of dinner is ready, there are clothes that are dry that need to be folded, and somebody's already on that. Who is washing this? Who is tidying up the bookshelves and things like that. And so I love that element of doing life together. And then I would, in terms of again of how to grow together versus apart, is constantly, periodically, just touch base. I don't want to put how much and how often, but we've talked about, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you like in this country? We've started to have the discussion of how long do we want to stay in the UK? What's the retirement plan, by the way? How many more years are we working towards retirement? Where do we even want to live when we retire? What are we going to do with our child? He's studied abroad all his life. What does that mean for high school and college? And while there's no certainty, I feel like just the constant talking and coming to a common place to discuss life. So you're not just roommates and life is not happening to you life is not just happening to you. You're planning for that life together. And even if it's just discussions of this is what happened and this is how I'm feeling about this country. And what happens when you travel. Tell me about your upcoming travels for the year. And speaking of travel, I have just loved how my husband has owned the fact that, my job requires me to travel a bit more than his does. And so he's been to parent-teacher meetings sometimes without me. Or there's something happening this week. There's a school trip happening and he's just so on top of it. And I know I don't want to sound like the bar. I saw that trend on Kenya and Instagram and TikTok about, the bar was so low or the bar was so high. Like, it's not that my bar is low in the fact that anything he does makes me happy. No, but it's also the appreciation of how he partners, in the sense that he's like, go, have fun. And sometimes he'll be like, actually, like the most recent trip where I went to Mexico for a colleague's wedding. And because I was going to have a layover in the US, and my sis recently relocated to the US with her husband. And my husband was like, you haven't seen your elder sister for like a year. Maybe pop by and say hi. And I was like, I'd not thought about that. And the fact that he was actually offering that I stay a little longer, I mean, it's stuff that just brings me joy in this partnership. Or he'll say, I'll come to him and say, I met this group of girls. We are thinking of traveling together, going somewhere. Like, yeah, sure, why not? Even when do we need to book flights? And again, with regard to just also constantly heading home every summer, that's July, August, and, together heading home and organizing for those flights early on and synchronizing calendars of when are you taking leave? Okay, talk to your boss, talk to your team. Let's see whether we can do that together, or you guys go first and then I'll join you later and then we can come back together. But just those constant conversations is the only thing I would add to, choose well as you're dating and check out those red flags. Remember that people change. We are changed by the things that happen to us, but our core values almost always remain the way they were, who we were. And then learning to do life together and to look for places where you connect, you celebrate, you discuss new opportunities, like you come to the table often. Keep those channels of communications and partnership going. I hope this has been useful. I hope that this has been illuminating for whoever it is that answers the question, and even for just the rest of you that just are listening in. If you did, please drop me a comment. Ask me any questions. If I'm not pretending to know everything, but if there's something that I have had a personal experience with or I've learned along the way, I'm always happy to share. Thank you so much. Bye.